nothing would be what it is, because everything would be what it isn't. And contrariwise what it is, it wouldn't be. And what it wouldn't be, it would. You see, Alice in Wonderland. By David. The force that seeks to control this world and introduce its global fascist state, the network I call the Illuminati, is nothing if not predictable. The unbelievable horror perpetrated on the cities of New York and Washington is a problem reaction. Solutions sting on the collective mind of all humanity, and I have been expecting an event of this magnitude for some years. I thought it could be a war or a nuclear terrorist device, but something fantastic was always going to happen during the years of the Bush presidency when, as I wrote on Inauguration Day, the agenda would be pressed forward with a gathering pace. Fast as the world was being moved towards global centralized fascism, it was still not fast enough to match the timescale demanded by the Illuminati agenda, and the opposition to their globalization plans and their assaults on freedom was gathering by the day. It was clear that something of enormous magnitude was being orchestrated that would so devastate the collective human mind with fear, horror, and insecurity, that solutions could be offered that would advance the agenda in a colossal leap almost overnight. This is what we saw in America on the ritually significant 11th day of the 9th month. 911 is the number for emergencies in the United States. Ritual and esoteric codes are at the heart of everything the Illuminati undertakes. And, mind-numbing as these atrocities are, this is the start, not the end, of the next cycle of the Illuminati agenda for the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical imprisonment of humankind. More and more death and destruction will unfold as the free world unites as an, in effect, world army and world government to use the threat of terrorism, their own, to justify a war against the people and countries they choose to take the rap for what the very forces within the free world are themselves responsible for. Even war with the Islamic peoples is not the end, but the means to an end, a conflict with the remaining forces of communism, which they also control. Remember that the Illuminati operate through every country and within terrorist organizations and those agencies which oppose such terrorism. Only by having agents within all sides can they be sure of controlling the game and knowing the outcome before it starts. The Illuminati have operatives within the Islamic world, just as they have them in the so-called free world, as we shall see in the months to come. Saddam Hussein is every bit as much a knowing Illuminati pawn as Father George and Boy George Bush in America, for example. C. And the truth shall set you free. The predictability of the ritualistic, emotionless, reptilian mind can be seen in the news management that has followed this U.S. disaster. Look at what always happens in these circumstances and you will see that the blueprint is the same in almost every case. Before the event happens, the fall guy or patsy is already set up to take the blame, thus steering the public mind away from dangerous speculation and onto a pre-ordained target. After the Kennedy assassination it was Lee Harvey Oswald, after Oklahoma it was Timothy McVeigh, now it is Osama bin Laden. Bin Laden, deeply misguided as he may be, is no more responsible for what happened this week than I am. His name was introduced with the most obvious coordination immediately after the disaster unfolded in the same way that the background to Lee Harvey Oswald was being circulated before President Kennedy was even dead. The idea that this guy from the mountains of Afghanistan with far more mouth than substance could be the Mr. Big of this enormous operation is utterly insulting to anyone of even basic intelligence. See the article by journalist Robert Fisk, who has met him. We are not talking a parcel bomb here, nor even some mind-controlled fanatic driving a car bomb into a restaurant in Jerusalem. 4 commercial airliners had to be simultaneously hijacked in American airspace via American airports and flown into highly specific targets within 45 minutes of each other. How was this possible? Because it was an inside job, that's how. Orchestrated by forces within the United States and planned by the highest levels of U.S. intelligence. In coordination with other strands of the Illuminati spider's web worldwide. With an army now of mind-controlled assets at their disposal, it is possible to get them to do anything they require once the mind is programmed and the trigger given to activate them. Those responsible for hijacking those planes and flying them into buildings will, in their conscious mind, have believed in the cause they were programmed to believe in. But in truth they were not hijacking and flying those planes. Their programming was. Mind control is now so sophisticated that such programming is almost child's play. This terror was not a failure of U.S. intelligence, for God's sake. They were not supposed to uncover the plot, and getting weapons onto planes is so much easier if you have support from those who control the system. I have heard that this is another Pearl Harbor, and yes it is. You can read and the truth shall set you free in other books and studies how the American government knew the Japanese were going to attack Pearl Harbor, but they did nothing about it. Why? Because they wanted it to happen for a specific reason, to justify the U.S. entry into the Second World War, which President Roosevelt, a blood relative of the Bushes, had said, just to get elected, that America would not be involved in. Problem, reaction, solution. And it's the same with the terrible events of this week. Press here for an explanation of problem, reaction, solution, PRS, if you are new to this technique. In the immediate aftermath of the attacks, the Pin It on Bin Laden campaign was launched as per pre-arranged plan. The Republican senator and Illuminati stooge, Orrin Hatch, for example, told CNN that he had high-level information from the FBI that Bin Laden was behind the unprecedented attacks. I do have some information, Hatch said in reference to his FBI briefing. They've come to the conclusion that this looks like it may be the signature of Osama bin Laden, that he may be the one behind this. It's okay, don't go on, Orrin, we get the message and you have done your job. Then we had the story of the hire car found so conveniently at Boston Airport, where 2 planes were hijacked, which contained yes wait for it a copy of the Quran and an instruction video for how to fly commercial jets. Am I in fairyland or what? I am surprised they did not claim to have discovered the letter from Bin Laden in the car wishing the occupants the best of luck with their task. Maybe they plan to find that tomorrow, eh? It's unbelievable nonsense, of course it is, but most will believe it. And you will see more and more manufactured evidence of the Bin Laden connection systematically revealed in the days and weeks ahead. So, the question, to benefits? Well, the Illuminati want the world government, an army, a world currency, and centralized global financial dictatorship and control. They want microchipped people in a society based on constant surveillance of all kinds at all times. And they want a frightened, docile, subservient people who give their power away to the authorities who can save them from what they have been manipulated to fear. Funnily enough, the question who benefits from these horrific events in America can be answered very simply, anyone who wants to introduce the above. The disaster of 9/11 means that the Illuminati now have the excuse to retaliate against anyone their propaganda machine can manipulate the population to believe was to blame. Attacks against Islamic targets have the potential to be the trigger for massive conflict and upheaval across the world, and especially in the Middle and Near East. The opportunities to then widen the conflict to involve Russia and China are endless. A third world war is part of the agenda, and this can open the way for that as the dominoes fall. The free world united with America rhetoric from Blair and other world leaders is code for coming together as a world army and police force to fight a war against terrorism. Already the Bilderberg-controlled NATO, the World Army in Waiting, has pledged such support, and the collective consciousness is being manipulated so comprehensively at this time that most people will support American and NATO terrorist attacks on unsubstantiated targets in the name of fighting terrorism. The stunning contradiction in this policy will be lost on the majority, blinded by the blatant and intense mind manipulation that has followed the outrages in those U.S. cities. As conflict escalates as a result of such calculated retaliation, the pressure for centralization of military power and the willingness to concede that power by the populations of America and elsewhere will gather. Until the world army is in place, a world army with the power to attack and take over any country that their propaganda machine can demonize. The collective mind of humanity, and particularly that of America, is understandably now in a deeply traumatized state. They have been subjected to collective trauma-based mind control, and, as any mind controller or researcher can tell you, a traumatized mind is a suggestible mind. So in the wake of the trauma comes the programming to manipulate the population to see events in the desired fashion. One of the biggest potential obstacles to the New World Order, the centrally controlled fascist global state, is the psyche of most American people. When faced with the prospect of giving up their right of self-determination to global military, political, and financial control, most would be vehemently opposed once they realized what was happening. The collective sense of security, confidence, and pride in their nation and system has been built on the foundations of immense military and financial strength. It is a collective version of the John Wayne mentality, "Don't mess with us, this is America." From that has come their collective confidence in themselves as a nation. Now that very sense of who they are, and their belief that they have the power to stand alone, is in danger of being devastated. It is absolutely no coincidence that the targets of those hijacked planes were the very symbols of America's sense of itself and its own security: the Pentagon, symbol of their military might, and the World Trade Center, twin pillars of their financial might. This is not primarily an attack on America, it is an attack on America's image and imagination of itself. Break their spirit and their sense of being American, break America's confidence in itself, put it in fear and fundamental insecurity, and you have overcome the most significant opposition to America allowing itself to be absorbed into the Illuminati's global and centrally dictated society. The American psyche will now be bombarded with more and more shocks to its security and sense of self, as with Oklahoma and the school shootings in the past. But from now on everything will be increased dramatically. It is vital that Americans refuse to submit to this and realize that those who are condemning the terrorism in their midst are those who are responsible for it. When I first traveled America in 1996, I was staggered at what a controlled society the land of the free really was, though still not as bad as Canada. Now in the wake of this tragedy, the United States, and other countries, are set to become a fortress of invasive surveillance and, what's more, because of what has happened, the American people will not utter a significant word of protest at the rapid expansion of this Big Brother society. Problem Reaction Solution. Watch for microchipping of people to be suggested to stop the terrorists. An economic disaster has long been predicted by those who have exposed and studied the Illuminati agenda. To overcome resistance to single currencies and central control of global finance, they need a world economic crash that will destroy the present system and kid the people into accepting centralized global control as the only way to overcome the crash. Problem Reaction Solution. This is another reason why these attacks struck in the very heart of America's economic system, and why in the days before the carnage the talk of a global economic recession was plastered across the world media. Now they have a blank sheet of paper with a chance to justify such a collapse, and you will see global economic bodies brought in